Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all of the books that I ended up reading in the month of April. So I read a total of 6 books, which I was really pleased about, and I also marathoned through a series, which I really enjoyed as well. I just need one more book and then I'll be caught up, so I'm very happy about that. But yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting out the month, I first read Her Final Breath by Robert Dugoni, and this is the second book in the Tracy Crosswhite series. So I read My Sister's Grave last summer, and I really enjoyed it, and so I ended up getting like basically the rest of the books of the series. Like, there's a new one coming out next year, but I have all of the current published works, so I got that for Christmas, and so I wanted to marathon through this. I haven't read like a crime series in a really long time, so I was really looking forward to this. But basically this one, so in My Sister's Grave, Tracy goes off to her small town where her sister was murdered, and her grave was kind of discovered 20 years after the fact, so she's going there. But when she goes and leaves kind of in Seattle, there is this basically crime going on with prostitutes, where prostitutes are getting killed, and they're basically being killed in a kind of with a noose, and then their legs are attached, and then like when they're not able to hold their legs up anymore, like they're kind of choking themselves with the noose. So this one kind of follows that series of murders, and so this one probably I really enjoyed this. It kind of got me back into this series because it was a good refresher, because it did talk a lot about what happened in the first one. So I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The ending was really intense, and I was trying to figure out like who this was, and I figured it out kind of like halfway through, kind of who I thought the murderer was, and I was correct. So that was really good as well. So I ended up finishing this one. Next, I ended up picking up the next one, the third one, and it is In the Clearing. And this one was my least favorite out of all the ones that I read, and I just felt like so Tracy is called by her friend that she made in the academy, who is a sheriff in this small town in northern Washington state, and so she's kind of called out, and it's a cold case that happened several years ago in like the 70s, where this girl who was like a First Nations is what we call them in Canada, but an indigenous from an indigenous family, and she basically one day was coming home from work and she was found dead in the river, so everyone just assumed she jumped. And so her father, like the detective who was up in this area, her father was the one who investigated this, but he didn't think it was a suicide, so Tracy's kind of looking into everything following there. I just felt a lot of disconnect from the characters in this one, because Tracy's kind of off doing her own thing, so it's not very centered around kind of the local, like kind of how these other ones are, where they're kind of based in Seattle and there's other characters in here. This one's very solely focused on Tracy, but I felt like a little bit of a disconnect from her in this one, and I figured out really early on what happened that night, so I was a little disappointed. I did give this one like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it too, and I also discovered this too when I was opening it, but it's also a signed copy as well, and I can tell it's signed because you can kind of see the marker bleed through. But I was really excited because I don't own a signed book, so I was really excited about that. My parents had no idea because they ordered this off of like Chapters, but yeah, really exciting as well. So these next two were probably my favorite out of the ones that I read. So the first one is The Trapped Girl, and this is obviously the next one in the series, and this basically is when this girl is found in a those little fishing compartment things that they put on the bottom of the ocean. She's kind of found there, and it leads to kind of this search for her and like how did she end up in here. But this one's unique because we do get the girl who supposedly was in this kind of fish cage. We get her perspective leading up to the events of this one, and this one had a major plot twist that I did not see coming. I was like, this was so good. This one I flew through. I really enjoyed this one, and I really love what happens with Tracy. There's a lot of personal development with Tracy's life in this one that I really loved, that I really liked, and I really loved the ending in here. It was just really sweet. So like I said, this one probably was my favorite. And then also sorry, the last one that I read was close to home. And this one is about this boy who, like 11-year-old boy who was crossing the street and he was killed in a hit and run, and Tracy and her team end up investigating that. But while this is all going on, one of the other people that's in her squad is looking into his niece's death, who died from a heroin overdose, and somehow these stories become interconnected. And I really like this one as well. This one also ended like for a personal kind of growth. I'm really excited to see what the next one has in store for Tracy. I really loved the ending for this one, and I was able, like, I was kind of figuring it out who was, like, what was actually going on with Tracy in this one as well, and kind of when Tracy figured it out, I figured it out. So I was really happy about that. I really liked this one. So I don't know if I said, but I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars and this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars. But I'm really loving this series. As you can see, like, I read 4 of them and I just need one more and then I'll be caught up with all of the published ones, and I think the new one comes out 2020. But yeah, I'm really happy I kind of marathon through this. So yeah, so kind of switching up genres here, because you could see I marathon through this crime series. This was a book that me and my aunt read for our book club. She suggested this one, and it was Every Note Played by Lisa Genova. And Lisa Genova was the author for Still Alice, which is a book that I read several years ago, but it basically follows a woman who gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's and just kind of her experience with the disease and kind of the progression of it, and then kind of how that affects people around her, like her family. And this one kind of follows a similar pattern. So it follows this man who gets diagnosed with ALS and kind of the progression of the disease and kind of how that impacts his relationship with his ex-wife. And so with Still Alice, I was so connected to the characters, and just especially Alice, kind of hearing what was going on in her head, like her internal monologue, which was really powerful, and I was really connected to all of the characters. And then this one here, I didn't really care much for the characters, so I wasn't invested in the story. I did really enjoy the kind of seeing the progression of the disease. With my clinical background in orthotics and prosthetics, like, I've worked with patients who had ALS. We provide them with ankle, foot orthoses, and they are mentioned in here, so like I knew kind of like that stuff, but it was kind of interesting to see kind of the progression. Like, I didn't know like all of the stages in here. That part was really interesting, but I just wasn't invested in these characters, so it kind of took away from the story, and I was just kind of at the end just kind of speed reading. So I was a little bit disappointed in here. I think the author did a phenomenal job at kind of talking about the progression of the disease, but the characters just weren't buying it for me, so I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. And lastly, this was a book that me and my friend had been buddy reading for a while, and we ended up finishing The Beauty of Darkness by Mary E. Pearson, and this is the third and final book in the Remnant Chronicles. And so I can't really discuss a lot of the kind of plot points in this one, but it basically follows a princess named Leah, who on her wedding day with an arranged marriage to a prince of another kingdom, she flees with her best friend, and so the prince goes after her, and then also an assassin is sent after her as well. But the first one is kind of setting everything up. It's very much you know, laying that foundation for the next two. The second one is my favorite. It's very political. I really like it. There's a lot of like political maneuvering and all that stuff, so it's really good. And then this is the conclusion, so we both really ended up enjoying this. This was my second time rereading this one, so I already there are things I forgot, but I still enjoyed it nonetheless. So I gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. It's honestly like my favorite, probably one of my favorite YA fantasy series. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and we're gonna read kind of the spin-off one. I read Dance of Thieves last summer, or Vow of Thieves, I forget the names. The names are confusing, but the second one is coming out for the spin-off series in August, so we're gonna read these, like, first one, I'll reread it, and then we'll read the second one when it comes out. But yeah, I'm very happy we finally finished this. We were on it for a while. It's quite a big book, but we both really enjoyed it, and so yeah. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books, or if you have some book suggestions that I should, you know, look into. Let me know. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.